My name is Chloe. I'm a 16-year-old girl, and I've been brought up by a remarkable woman who I consider my true mom, named Eleanor, aged 47. My upbringing was quite unusual. I was actually born through surrogacy because my real mother, Harper, aged 47, never wanted children, whereas my father had a deep desire to be a dad. They settled on surrogacy, and that's how I came into this world. My early childhood was marked by the absence of my mother. Harper, hailing from a wealthy family, largely left my care to a series of childcare while she pursued her own interests. My father, on the other hand, adored me. He cherished every moment with me, despite his demanding work schedule. Unfortunately, my father passed away in a tragic car accident when I was just 8, a loss that devastated me and left a void in my life. Following his death, Harper's detachment from me grew. She threw herself into a life of social events and luxury, showing little interest in my well-being. The childcare she hired were cold and indifferent, and as I grew older and more aware of my neglect, I began to protest against their cruel treatment. By the time I was 9, fed up with my complaints and seeing me as a nuisance, Harper decided she had enough and arranged for someone to take me away. That someone turned out to be Eleanor, my surrogate mother. She was the polar opposite of Harper. Kind, caring, and genuinely happy to have me around. Living with Eleanor, I began to heal. She encouraged me to express my feelings openly, which was a stark contrast to the emotional repression I had experienced. It wasn't long before I started calling her Mom, a title she truly deserved because of the love and nurturing she provided, something I had been craving since my father's death. Years passed, and recently, after I inherited a mansion from my grandfather, Harper suddenly showed an interest in reconnecting with me. Now, at 19, I find myself pondering the intentions of a mother who had abandoned me in my most vulnerable years. This turn of events brings a mix of emotions and decisions that I must navigate carefully. Designing is the passion I've decided to pursue in my life, a flame that was sparked by someone very special. She has supported every facet of my life, continuously offering her encouragement. Even now, I can clearly recall how my trust in her began to grow the day she helped me organize my books on a new bookshelf she had brought to my house. While I had plenty of books and shelves in my previous home, it was with her that I began to understand their true value. Though not wealthy, I later discovered that she received regular payments from my previous caretaker, Harper, to look after me and to keep silent about my circumstances. After a few months, our relationship had deepened to resemble that of a mother and daughter, and she approached Harper to seek full custody of me. To my surprise, Harper readily agreed, almost relieved to have me out of her life. We lived comfortably on the funds Harper provided for nearly 8 years, until the day she decided to re-enter my life. I was home alone when Harper appeared at my doorstep. Initially, I didn't recognize her, but recognition slowly dawned. Despite my reluctance, I knew that turning her away would disappoint the woman who had become like a mother to me, so I invited Harper inside. While I fetched her water, she surveyed our modest, cozy living room with visible disdain, a sharp contrast to her luxurious mansion. It was simple, but it was enough for us. When she arrived, I was already uncomfortable with Harper's presence. Unexpectedly, Harper demanded that I return with her, a request that shocked and confused me. Fear gripped me at the thought of being abandoned once again. However, she firmly refused Harper's demands, reminding her that legally, I was now her daughter. Despite Harper's offer of a substantial sum of money, she stood her ground, ensuring Harper understood that I would not be taken away from her. Harper was persistent, asking if I would consider returning with her, as if her previous neglect could be forgotten with the promise of wealth. I rejected her offer outright, telling her that no amount of money could replace the feeling of a true family. She left her contact information, suggesting the money was negotiable, as if that could change our minds. The audacity of her offer was astounding, but it only reinforced the bond between me and the woman who truly cared for me, proving that family isn't about blood ties or financial offers, but about love and genuine care. I couldn't believe it when she showed up at my doorstep, just months before my birthday. She treated me coldly, as if I were a mere inconvenience she wished she didn't have to deal with. It baffled me. Why come here if that's how she felt? What were her true intentions? Was it guilt or a desire to reconnect after all these years? Honestly, even if it were true that she wanted to make amends, I wasn't sure I could go back to living with her. I love California too much. Besides, Eleanor, my adoptive mother, is the real maternal figure in my life. I've caught Eleanor looking at clothing designing school brochures for me, and she even tried to get me a job at a friend's clothing store. She has supported me in every way imaginable. I couldn't think of my mother as my real mom, not when Eleanor has been there for me in the ways that truly count. Now, should I be suspicious of Harper's motives? Her sudden appearance has piqued my curiosity, despite my reluctance. I feel guilty, as if I'm betraying Eleanor by even considering Harper's words. Harper took over the conversation, her earlier hostility replaced by a calm demeanor. She admitted she had been a terrible mother and that Eleanor was undoubtedly better for me. Yet, she pleaded for a chance to reconnect, to be the mother she never was during my childhood. I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed silent, which Harper took as a rejection. However, she said I didn't have to make any decisions immediately. I didn't even have to agree to move back in with her or call her mom. She just wanted an opportunity to mend our past and the relationship she had damaged. Harper invited me to dinner, asking me to keep it a secret from Eleanor, understanding that Eleanor might not approve. She wanted to spend some time with me, and I told her I would think about it. Though part of me resents my curiosity, I can't help but ponder the what-ifs. Eleanor has treated me well, and I'm not considering replacing her. No amount of money could make me leave her. But I'm curious to see what might happen with Harper. After all, she is my mother. While I might never see her as my real mom, we do share DNA, and that connection, complicated as it is, keeps drawing me back. I bear a striking resemblance to her, so when I messaged Harper to let her know I'd come over, she promptly sent me the address along with the date and time. I concocted a fib for my guardian, saying I was heading out to dinner with a group of friends. My closest friend even agreed to cover for me if my guardian called, which I doubted would raise any eyebrows since it's typical for me to hang out with my friends often. Today, I visited my mother's impressive mansion, expecting a simple family dinner. To my astonishment, it turned out to be a grand affair with even my grandfather, RD, aged 67, in attendance. I hadn't seen him in about a decade, yet the moment he saw me, he embraced me warmly. Memories of him carrying me on his shoulders during past visits flashed through my mind. Several aunts and uncles were also present. Though I didn't recall them clearly, I had fleeting images of them in my memory. They all interacted with me as if everything was normal, which I found bizarre. Initially, I thought they might feel awkward about my previous abandonment by the family, but then Harper began fabricating stories. She boasted about my supposed upcoming university studies in business and expressed pride in me, which clued me in that no one at the table knew of my abandonment at age 9. An aunt inquired about my schooling, and Harper quickly chimed in, claiming I had been in a boarding school abroad for the last 8 years. This made me feel incredibly uncomfortable and repulsed by her deception, to the point where I wanted to just leave and perhaps shed some tears. Luckily, my cousin DG, who is 19, noticed my distress and suggested we step out to the backyard for some fresh air by the pool. The mansion was larger than I remembered, with a vast garden leading to a tennis court and a swimming pool. It seemed excessive for someone to live in such a sprawling space alone, and since Harper hadn't introduced a partner, I assumed she resided there by herself, perhaps with some staff. DG commented on how fortunate I was to live here, which puzzled me. When I probed further, she revealed that RD planned to bequeath the mansion to Harper because he wanted to pass it down to someone with an heir. She hinted that I was that heir, which was a shock. This was when it dawned on me that Harper was pretending everything was fine to secure her inheritance. Since she was no longer my legal heir after her marriage to my father and subsequent events, she wouldn't inherit the mansion after RD's passing. RD had originally transferred the estate to her to build a family home there, and with his health declining, he was keen to finalize his will. He had convened a family meeting and inquired about my whereabouts, as I had been out of touch for 8 years. Harper falsely claimed that I was overseas pursuing my studies. During the meeting, Grandpa expressed his satisfaction in leaving his estate to Harper, acknowledging her status as a single parent, and mentioned an upcoming family dinner to reintroduce me to everyone. This revelation made me feel exploited and furious. It became evident that Harper had no real desire to reconnect with me. Her primary aim was to secure the mansion. I resolved not to let her scheme succeed. This is Chloe updating you all. I've taken action against my mother's manipulative ways. Let me fill you in on the recent events. When I returned last week, my adoptive mother, Eleanor, could sense something was amiss despite my efforts to conceal it. Her warmth and concern overwhelmed me, and I ended up pouring out everything I had discovered. To my relief, she wasn't upset. She even said she would have allowed me to attend the dinner with Harper had I discussed it with her. I shared my entire ordeal with her, from the moment of realization to my regret of attending the dinner. If I had not shown up, RD might have grown suspicious and possibly withheld the estate from Harper, sparing me the pain of feeling used and discarded. I implored Eleanor to help me locate RD so I could set things straight about Harper's deceit. Initially hesitant, she eventually conceded, remembering a visit to his estate many years ago. We planned our visit for the next weekend. Today, Eleanor drove me to the address she recalled. As we arrived, she recognized it instantly, and I confirmed it was the right place by the family name on the gate. Eleanor stayed in the car while I went inside. RD, surprised by my visit, greeted me from his wheelchair in the backyard. He was having a rough day, but managed to welcome me warmly, even offering me my favorite childhood candy, which I still loved. I took a deep breath and revealed the truth to him. Harper was not my guardian. I explained how she had relinquished my care to Eleanor 8 years prior and had abandoned me, contrary to his belief that she had sent me abroad for education. RD was stunned by the revelation. We sat in silence for a moment before I decided it was time to leave. As I headed towards the door, he called out to me, prompting a pause in our conversation. If I had the chance to visit again, I remember asking him if he would appreciate it, and his response was enthusiastic. He was excited about the idea of me coming back. As we said our goodbyes, both of us were smiling and made plans to meet the following weekend. He even promised to be a gracious host next time, giving me a complete tour of his house. Now that I'm back home, I'm really glad I made the trip. Even though nothing significant might come from it, I'm just happy to be back in touch with a family member from my bloodline. I'm particularly excited about the idea of reconnecting with my grandfather and looking forward to him showing me around his place. 1 month ago, I visited his place again, and he showed me around his home. We've been having wonderful times ever since. I started visiting him every weekend after I turned 19, and my grandfather generously gave me a car after making sure it was okay with California laws. I was thrilled and made a promise to drive over to see him every weekend in the car he gifted me. However, during these 1 months, I watched his health decline rapidly. Within a month of my regular visits, he became permanently confined to a wheelchair, and in the last few weeks, he was bedridden, only able to talk and move his hands. The last time I visited him, he was in terrible shape, barely able to keep his eyes open. I felt a deep sense of helplessness as I had grown to care for him profoundly. He was the only member of my blood family who genuinely cared about me. That day, I read my favorite book to him, hoping he could hear me, or at least sense my presence. I promised to come back the next day, even though it was a Monday. Unfortunately, that night, he was rushed to the hospital and I couldn't see him. He passed away 4 days later. His son, my uncle, was with him. Today, we held his funeral, and I was inconsolable, crying on my cousin's shoulder. I was resentful, especially towards Harper, feeling bitter as she appeared to be grieving at the service. Whether her tears were genuine or not, I couldn't help but feel they were insincere. Later, when we returned home, his lawyer was ready to read the will. I went back mainly because I wanted to be in his house one last time, not expecting to be allowed there after today. The reading of the will was shocking. The lawyer announced that I had inherited Harper's mansion, which left Harper visibly stunned and confused. The lawyer instructed her to be patient as he hadn't finished. RD had left something for each of his children and grandchildren, and by the end, emotions were high. Finally, it was Harper's turn. The lawyer presented a letter from RD to Harper, admonishing her for her greed and revealing that she had abandoned me because she didn't want the responsibility of caring for me. When RD revealed the condition that I must have an heir to inherit the mansion, Harper falsely claimed she still had rights. Angered by my honesty to RD, Harper attempted to assault me, but the family's security intervened swiftly, preventing her from reaching me. Amidst her outbursts about ruined plans, I remained silent while our relatives looked on with disapproval. As Harper was escorted out, still yelling, the lawyer firmly instructed her to vacate the mansion within the month to allow me to move in. The family apologized for being unaware of Harper's deceit, but overwhelmed by the drama, I discreetly left the scene with Eleanor, feeling relieved that RD had taken my concerns seriously. Since RD confirmed my inheritance of our largest mansion, previously occupied by my mother, leaving Harper with nothing. Harper failed to leave the property by the deadline, prompting the lawyer to involve the police to enforce her eviction. I haven't kept track of her whereabouts, and frankly, I'm indifferent to her situation. Meanwhile, I've grown closer to some of my cousins. We've been interacting on social media and have met a few times. My aunts and uncles, perhaps feeling guilty about my past abandonment, have encouraged these connections. I'm grateful for their efforts to show they care. Recently, Harper showed up, pleading to stay, but I reminded her that the mansion was mine now and firmly turned her away, closing the door on any further manipulation. Life in the mansion has been peaceful since, and I'm actively pursuing an internship at my dream clothing store.